What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. In this video, I'm going to be testing the 7.62x39 against some 16 gauge sheet metal. So I have a special jig that I made where I can line up multiple sheets of 16 gauge or any gauge sheet metal, and I want to see how many sheets the 7.62x39 can penetrate through with some East German steel core bullets that I've pulled from some old East German 7.62x39 ammo and hand loaded into some brass cases using non-corrosive powder and primers. And so this is my Zastava M92. It has a 10.5-inch barrel, and what we're going to do is we're going to compare the 7.62x39 with steel core versus non-steel core and see the difference against the 16 gauge sheet metal. And why are we shooting at sheet metal? Well, sheet metal is a very common building material and a very common material in general in vehicles and homes. So this will give us an idea of what kind of penetration we can expect in sheet metal with the 7.62x39 steel core and non-steel core. Now, because this is a 10.5-inch barrel AK SBR, this is a legally registered SBR. You can see the folding stock there. And because it's 10.5 inches, I had to hand load these to some pretty hot levels. So normally the standard 123 grain full metal jacket will average you around 2,300 to 2,400 feet per second out of a standard AK barrel, so like 16 or 20 inch barrel. But because we're working with a 10.5-inch barrel, I loaded these up so we could basically duplicate the velocity out of a standard AK-47. Okay, so both of these have been loaded to a muzzle velocity of right around 2,400 feet per second. They're both 123 grains. So this is the 123 grain East German steel core, and I just colored it black with a Sharpie just to let me know that this is a steel core. And we're using Norma brass and some military grade primers. And these are loaded to 2,400 feet per second muzzle velocity. And then here we have some 123 grain standard full metal jacket and also loaded to 2,400 feet per second. So basically the same velocity, and out of this 10.5-inch barrel, we're going to be getting the same velocity of a standard full metal jacket military load from a standard length AK. Okay, so the barrel actually ends right here on this rifle, but this is the suppressor. This is a Silencer Co. Omega 300. So the barrel ends right here. I mean, it's really, really short. And then here's the folding stock. Absolutely love this rifle. I'll show you guys some more of the features of this rifle, some more of the customizations I've done. Here's the sheet metal we're going to shoot at. 16 gauge sheet metal, steel. Okay, this is steel, not aluminum or anything else. This is some tough stuff, and it's a 1/16 of an inch thick. Okay, and let me just show you up close some more of the features of this Zastava M92. So I put a aim point H2 on there. Absolutely love this aim point. I think it's perfect for an AK because it's small, lightweight, and very accurate. At 200 yards, I'm getting like 4 to 6 inch groups, sometimes 8 inch groups, but that's really good for a dot sight with an AK. Okay, and I can do that all day long. So very, very awesome sight. It's definitely not cheap, but if you're going to rely on your weapons for self-defense, you have to invest a little bit of money in quality gear. And then I changed out the forend with this Midwest Industries Ultimac forend, so this way I can have this aim point and other accessories. You can see here I have this loop, and I also have this Olight Balder with the green laser. Silencer Co. Omega 300 30 caliber suppressor. I've had this suppressor for several years. I'm going to be doing a full review on it. I think it's one of the best 30 cal suppressors out there. I've used it on everything from 308 to 300 Win Mag and now AK. So very quiet suppressor. Really love it. And this is just a stamped AK made in Serbia. Okay, it's a Zastava. So it's made in Serbia. Changed out the grip with a mag pull. I think it's much better. The standard AK grip is a little too skinny for me. I have big hands, so I like to have a little bit more meat on the grip there so I can get a positive purchase on it. And then this is the folding stock. Absolutely love it. And then this is what it looks like folded. So highly recommend you guys getting yourself an AK with an SBR setup. I think it's excellent as a truck gun or just camp guns or home defense. Excellent rifle and really reliable. I haven't had a single jam with this rifle so far. I fired hundreds of rounds through it. So let's get to shooting and see what happens. Let's see how many pieces of sheet metal will penetrate through with the 123 grain East German steel core, and then compare it to the 123 grain full metal jacket. See which one penetrates deeper. And I've already done a sheet metal test with this AK before, but I didn't do it with the steel core. I did it with soft points and factory full metal jackets. So that's up on my channel already. I'll leave a link in the top right corner if you're interested in watching that. And I'll leave a link to my entire playlist with all of my AK videos and 7.62x39 tests up in the top right corner as well. But keep in mind, with an AK pistol or AK SBR, you're going to be losing about 200 to 300, even 350 feet per second, depending on the time of the year, from factory ammo. Okay, in colder conditions, you're going to lose even more velocity. So let's see what happens. Stay tuned for the test. Hope you guys enjoy it. All right, guys. First 3 shots are going to be with the steel core. Then last 3 are going to be regular. All right, guys, AK-47 SBR, Zastava M92, 10.5-inch barrel, East German steel core, hand loaded to around 2,400 feet per second, 123 grain versus regular full metal jacket, non-steel core, 123 grain. Basically, the penetration through sheet metal was identical almost, with actually the regular FMJ penetrating slightly more. So the steel cores penetrated through 6 sheets, and the regular FMJs almost penetrated through 7. So this is the 7th sheet. You can see actually one of them went through, and then one down here almost went through. You can see a little bit of like a split in the metal there. And then up here you can see the dents from the steel core. So actually these FMJs are traveling maybe 25 to 50 feet per second faster, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But pretty interesting results. I thought the steel core would go through a lot more than that. I thought it was going to go through 8 or 9. But no, basically the same as regular full metal jacket, regular copper jacketed. I thought the steel core would go through more, but guess not. But compared to the factory ammo, because I'm hand loading these about 300 feet per second faster than the factory ammo, they did out penetrate the factory ammo. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link in the top right corner. But I'm going to take this apart and we'll take a closer look at these sheets. But initial results, basically no difference between the steel core and regular full metal jacket. Same velocity, same grain weight of bullet. No difference in sheet metal, 16 gauge. So pretty interesting, because against body armor, the steel cores do much better. And I have done a test with the steel cores against level 4 LA police gear ceramic armor. You may want to check that out. The penetration was a lot better than regular full metal jacket. But I'm going to take this apart. We'll take a closer look at the sheets and see what happened up close. All right, guys, so I wanted to show you the sheet metal up close. Very surprising results. I thought the steel core would pass through at least 1 or 2 more sheets, but looks like that did not happen. So here's our first sheet. Let me show you the back. You can see those nice little holes there. It looks like actually the full metal jackets punched through with more force than the steel cores. You can tell by the damage done. You can see that more of the metal was blown out by the full metal jackets. And I don't know if that's because the full metal jackets are actually slightly faster, like 25 feet per second faster, or if it has something to do with something else. I don't know. Here's the second sheet. And here's the back of the second sheet. You can actually see that the full metal jackets punched through more cleanly than the steel core for some reason. You can see the holes are more perfectly circle here, and then some of these are like more oval shaped. Here's sheet number 3. See, the holes are getting quite big, but what's interesting is the full metal jacket holes are bigger than the steel core holes. That's pretty interesting. And also the steel core is leaving behind more lead dust already. Look at all the lead dust there. And then the full metal jackets, no lead dust. That could have to do with the jacket quality. You know, these steel cores are old. You know, they're from the Cold War and they're East German, so I'm sure their jackets were not as high quality as these American modern full metal jackets, which have a real thick jacket. So my guess is that the jacket probably started to tear off already after the 3rd sheet with the steel cores, and that's why you're seeing the lead dust there versus the regular Full Metal Jacket. Looks like the jackets are still intact because you don't see any lead. And then here's the back of the third sheet. And here's the fourth sheet. You can start to see a lot of lead dust with the East German steel cores. And you can see those holes are starting to be more non-circular versus the Full Metal Jackets. The modern Full Metal Jackets, still perfect circles. So very interesting. And then here we have the fifth sheet. You can see these holes are really starting to get large. Put my whole finger through, okay? But you can see how the East German steel cores really starting to leave these ragged holes versus the Full Metal Jackets, still nice and circular. You can start to see some of the lead coming out of the Full Metal Jackets. You can see the lead dust there. So at this point, the Full Metal Jackets have probably started to lose a lot of their jacket material, and the lead is starting to make contact with the sheet metal, but a lot more lead dust with the East German steel cores. And then here's the back of the fifth sheet. You can see the Full Metal Jackets still nice, perfect circles compared to the steel cores. You have these ragged holes. Okay, so what that tells me is that the East German steel cores, although they have a steel core, a very small steel penetrator inside, the actual bullet itself is softer than the modern Full Metal Jackets. The actual lead and the jacket around the lead is softer on these East German steel cores than the modern Full Metal Jackets. So that's why we're starting to see these ragged holes, and you can see this huge piece of metal here, okay? And that's because at this point in the fifth sheet, these East German steel cores are probably already flattened out, or mostly flattened out, sort of like a soft point. And the Full Metal Jackets are probably not as flattened out because they're harder. And then here we have the sixth sheet, and you can see here really ragged holes, and actually one of these East German steel cores hardly penetrated through the sixth sheet. Okay, you can see just a little split there, okay, but it didn't go through cleanly like the other two. And then here we have the modern Full Metal Jackets, still perfect circles here compared to the East German steel cores, okay? And then here's the back of the sixth sheet. You can see right there, one of the East German steel cores failed to completely penetrate through. And then here we have the seventh sheet, and you can see one of the Full Metal Jackets made it through. One of them just barely broke the metal. You can see like a little crack in there. And then one of them didn't go through. And then here you can see the East German steel cores just left a very small dent, okay, with lots of lead dust. Look at all the lead dust there. But very interesting results, very unexpected. Here's the back of the seventh sheet. You can see the Full Metal Jacket there penetrating through. So there you guys have it. AK-47 7.62x39 East German steel core out of a SBR, 10.5-inch barrel, but hand loaded to standard length barrel AK velocities, so 2,400 feet per second. Penetrating through 6 sheets of 16 gauge sheet metal. That's still very impressive, but that still puts it right around the same amount of penetration as a 44 Magnum or 10 millimeter auto. So it's really not that impressive for a rifle. Once you go up to like a 308, there's probably about 30 to 50% more penetration in sheet metal. And I've done a sheet metal test with 308, so you definitely want to check that out as well. I'll leave a link in the top right corner, and check out my other 7.62x39 versus sheet metal test, where I tested a bunch of factory ammo, factory velocities out of the 10.5-inch barrel, both soft points and full metal jackets. So 6 sheets of 16-gauge sheet metal for the East German steel core, 2,400 feet per second, and the regular full metal jacket penetrating through 7 sheets, one more sheet. Very interesting. And I want to just quickly show you guys some of the bullets and fragments that I recovered before ending the video. So here we have some actual bullets. Here we have the core of one of these bullets. You can see the lead. This is pure lead. There's no jacket on it anymore. Looks like the jacket just came right off. You can see all that lead exposed there. And you can see the jacket got flattened out and like pushed back. Check that out. So the jacket is still on this thing, but it got like flattened out. And I'm not sure if this is the full metal jacket or the steel core. I'm not exactly sure. You can see this is where the base would be, and it got flattened out. But still together. The lead and the jacket are still together. I don't see a steel penetrator in this one, so I'm going to guess that this is the full metal jacket. And then here we have a lead core. Check that out. That's pretty cool to see how it flattened out. Jacket is obviously gone, and then here's a jacket. So this could be the jacket for that core. Check that out. That's pretty cool. And you can see this little circular piece of sheet metal that the bullet just punched through like a hole puncher. Check that out. And then here's another one. You can see that some of the core is still in there. You can see the jacket. This looks like the full metal jacket. I can tell because with the full metal jackets, they don't have a boat tail, and the East German steel core actually have boat tails, which is impressive for how old those bullets are, you know, from the Cold War. Plus they were made by the Soviets, and the Soviets were known for cutting costs, but they actually have boat tails, which is impressive. But the modern full metal jackets do not have boat tails, so you can see just a regular flat base here. So that's how I can tell this is the full metal jacket. So that's what I found near the 6th sheet, and you can see all of the sheet metal that it pressed through and squeezed together. It's pretty impressive. And then here we just have some sheet metal pieces. It's literally just sheet metal here. Okay, kind of looks like the little circular pieces of paper when you punch holes in paper with a hole puncher. But that's pretty much it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for more AK-47 and AK-47 SBR content, more 7.62x39 content. Check out my playlists. They're in the link in the top right corner. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.